Well, I think from the perspective of a great many people throughout Idaho and probably across the country, because this has become such a big issue for a lot of Americans, we just feel that part of our traditions are being thrown out to appease the politically correct. There was a vote last night. The school board, Teton School Board, voted to, after 90 years, they're calling it, I think the word I read this morning was retiring the name Redskins from the school, which, of course, generations of people going back to 1929 played there and attended school there and were known by that name. And I think some of us were a bit surprised by that vote, too. Joining us this morning, Doug Wilson has been with us the last several weeks, talking with us on air about this process. And he has a student still at the school, and one of his sons graduated recently. And his wife's family, I mean, generations of them were known as Redskins. He's joining us again this morning. And Doug, welcome back to our show.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning.
I want to mention, of course, if you're just tuning in too, you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're 6 minutes after 7 o'clock and it's 60. To begin with, I guess I was a little surprised because I was hearing so much different chatter on this. I was of the impression that the board was not going to act so quickly and not going to act in this direction. What's your feeling on all of this?
It was very quick. It was pushed by a few members of the board, and they did say at some point we've got to make a decision to move forward. I believe they made the wrong decision, especially with the options of letting the public vote, and then Ben Kersley, my personal zone representative, said, if we stop right now, we lose the input of everybody. They've, in my opinion, they've made themselves the enemy of the people that were willing to help and even compromise to come to a solution.
Was there, I think, well, obviously there was a lot of pressure coming from various interest groups and might call them stakeholders, but I think we generally call them special interest groups and that were being brought to bear. And I know that people in politics seem to fear newspaper editorialists. I don't know why, but I wonder if they were looking over their shoulders while all of this was going on.
Oh, absolutely. They're looking over their shoulders. I learned a new word yesterday. It's confirmational bias, and it seems as though the information and the people pushing the agenda from beyond the school district would simply confirm what a few members of the school board already believed, which made them feel righteous in what they're doing.
Righteous is a good way to put it. Everybody today, it seems, has an opportunity to virtue signal, and some people do it more than others.
They do. You're absolutely right.
Now, is there at this stage, is there a plan B for those of you who felt the name Redskins was near and dear and a tradition that you needed to uphold?
There is a plan. It's kind of loose at the moment. The motion that passed was to slowly and respectfully retire the Redskin name. I don't know how slow they can go. Our opening football game away is in 45 days, and oddly enough, the only uniforms we have for football that say Redskins are our away jerseys. So are they going to mad rush and order new uniforms? Are we going to actually get input and work together to come up with a solution? Because yes, the Redskin name is gone, but we've adopted a symbol on our Save the Redskins shirts of a chief's head with a headdress, and that's allowed to stay at this point.
What do they
So
do? Do they take tape and put it over the word Redskins on the away jerseys? Is that how that works?
I don't know. They won't do it on my son's jersey because I paid for it.
There has to be, I would imagine, probably this will get absorbed in the community, and a lot of people who weren't necessarily at the meeting may just be hearing about it this morning in local diners and coffee shops and as they go about their business. But I've got to believe that you could even have a bigger crowd at the next board meeting, because I think about what happened in, what was it, St. Louis Park, Minnesota, where they decided they were going to pull the Pledge of Allegiance. The local council did that, and there were so many objectors that I think just a couple of days ago they voted to restore it. And I wonder if you can. It maybe a lot of people who weren't alarmed now will be, and they'll show up and say, "Hey, wait a minute."
Yeah, it's my honest opinion on that is it's a little too late. I mean, we do have a plan in place, and there is the agenda. That might not be a great word, but there is the strong possibility of keeping a native symbol as our logo, as our sport collective's name, because we are keeping the native redskin head that and headdress that we've adopted on our shirts. Interestingly enough, Teton High School never paid for a copyrighted logo or anything of the sort. I called the athletic director a few years ago to say, where do I find all the approved logos for the Teton Redskins? And he says there aren't any. Whatever you use is fine. So I think out of a willingness to help preserve the name, I believe one of our allies, Tracy Tonks, has designed the school's first adopted logo.
I was going to say maybe the new name, if you keep a traditional looking logo, maybe the new name at this point could be, I don't know, the Teton Indigenous Tribesmen, but it would seem maybe that would be a little lengthy to get onto a uniform.
Yeah, when you pay by the letter, that's a little bit much, and we are in Teton County, and we're squeezing nickels till the buffaloes poop around here, trying to get.
I, uh, I think about what's happened around the country, and one of the most infamous cases happened at North Dakota, where the university, even in what always surprised me about that was the Sioux tribe 50 years ago had backed up the use of the Fighting Sioux and the logo, and yet still people who think they know better than everybody else moved and they changed the name. And I'm even told that students who show up at the arenas trying to wear the old logo and the old name are turned away. It will there be? I'm sure you're going to have people who show up with signage and the like that will show up for ball games, basketball games, volleyball games. That's not going to go away.
That's not going to go away. The beauty of this for me, looking for the upside of everything, is we change a logo. It was discussed last night as a compromise to become the Teton Tribe. I'm hoping for the Teton Redskin Warriors, and if Redskin still offends in a few years, just become the Teton Warriors, with a hope to save the Redskin name. But with the Teton Tribe, I'm already seeing T-shirts saying Redskins at heart.
I spoke to a prominent political leader here in Idaho this week, off air, who told me that when I mentioned that there could be a vote, a public vote, that the board could turn it over, he said that would be the smartest thing for them to do politically and also the best thing for the public. This is what I guess still shocks me about all of this is no one recognized that from the board's perspective.
Well, actually, somebody did recognize it. I don't believe it was the board. It was a community leader called the Secretary of State, and according to state law or whatever, the school board cannot turn an agenda item over to a vote. Bonds, levies, no problem, but this is an internal matter and technically doesn't need public vote. So it becomes our problem as a public initiative. But now that the school board has ruled, the public initiative takes on a whole new meaning.
Well, Doug, hold on to that thought for a minute. We've got to get to a break. I've got to get to the farm report this morning, and we'll continue our conversation for a few more minutes with Doug Wilson. He's joining us this morning. Again, he has a son, a recent graduate from Teton Valley, and again another son still in school. Talking about the board's decision last night to retire the name Redskins. It's 7:15 on KLIX and 60. Spending some time this morning with Doug Wilson. He is a parent and has been a parent of students at Teton High School, and they will no longer be known as the Redskins, or at least for now. Maybe that's a good way to put that. He's joining us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 60 and 722. Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning until 10 a.m. Doug, I think probably the logical question here is, well, maybe to set this up a little bit, I have been one of my very first jobs was to spend a lot of time covering school board meetings 30 some years ago. And a lot of people who actually end up running and getting elected to school boards don't have any political ambitions beyond that. But for a great many, it's a stepping stone to higher office, whether it be county commissioner and then state legislature, and they move up. Uh, do you think that any of these people were trying to do a calculus here and figure out if this was going to help or hinder their political careers?
I can't see that. Two of the members, young men with families and kids in school. The other three, I question. Um, it's hard to say. All those are the same three that whose tenure expires in this year. They have to get reelected or replaced. But as a stepping stone or a launching point, I don't see it. And in this state, I don't think that's a huge mark on their resume.
So at this point, it's entirely possible a lot of them may have just essentially, in a figurative sense, signed the paperwork that ends their political careers.
I believe it's possible.
I was going to say there's going to be a lot of voices that'll come forward, I am sure now, at this point, who will campaign, maybe even just on a single issue, and it'll be this issue. Uh, are you aware of any, perhaps, folks who are lining up to do that?
I'm aware of two specifically, um, and I know that there's a rally to find a third. It's amazing what something like this will do to open your eyes to apathy and what happens when you're not paying attention. Um, but last night it was said that there's more people at this school board meeting than there is at most of our sporting events, which unfortunately is true. But this has been a wake up call, and now we're paying attention.
I've got to believe because as I understand it in Cedar City in Utah, something similar happened. A lot of the people who voted to go ahead with this decision and make this change, uh, it pretty much some of them even the pressure afterwards, as I understand it, they didn't even wait for an election; they resigned.
You're absolutely right. Have a gentleman down there, Tony, I've talked with off and on through this process. It's always great to talk to people who have already been through this or done this to see how things worked out. You know, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? What's next? And he has an agenda, and his simple desire is to expose what happened there to help keep it from happening at other places.
The students, as I'm told, I think that you told me the original story that the student newspaper had editorialized, and I realize a lot of teenagers try to be idealistic, had editorialized against the name, but students themselves overall, I would imagine, they're not a group of happy campers this morning.
They're not. The faces on kids that were at the meeting last night, the text messages that are being sent back and forth, it is the county was described as having a rift in it yesterday, but it's turned into the Grand Canyon. Um, and kids are hurt. This was supposed to be done for the betterment of the kids because, as one school board member explained, their entire job is to make it the school district better for the children. And I don't know when that's going to happen after this decision.
After the last meeting, I think it was last Monday, a week ago Monday, I remember seeing some photographs from the meeting, and but there were a lot of people there. We talk about these special interests who came in. Some of them traveled long distances to be at the meeting, and obviously a lot of them were objectors to the name. And it makes me wonder if somehow the local people who live there and who vote there and who send their kids to that school, if your voices got discounted because maybe people their eyes glazed over when they saw someone they thought was important from somewhere else.
You're exactly right. We could have, if our football team this year wins the state title for the first time since the 90s, and you have, I don't know, Aquaman walk in the room, that football team isn't there anymore. The other, there's people that are attention getters, and for us that was the Shoban Nation, and as much as we appreciate their input, I'm pretty sure a sovereign nation lobbying against a county and a school board, there's something ill about that.
We got to wrap up here in about a minute or so, but anything else you wanted to add? Anything that is coming up that people should be aware of? Because at least you have moral support here, and maybe you could find people here too that would be willing to make a few phone calls.
Well, unfortunately, there is no agenda at this point. The board ended last night with the motion approved to retire the Redskin name in a slow, respectful manner, including all stakes concerned, with no public money, which with the construction and the things like that going on, I just don't see how that's going to happen. But good luck, fellas. But there is nothing on the agenda at this point. I haven't looked at the school board webpage this morning, but I'm pretty sure they are all either still drinking champagne or laying in bed going, what the hell happened?
Well, stay in touch. I will. I'll be keeping tabs on it as well, and I'll be getting in touch with you if anything starts to break soon on this. I look forward to talking to you again, and I would say keep up the faith.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate your time.
Hey, take care, sir.
Thank you.
Doug Wilson joining us this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And as we pointed out in previous conversations with him, his family, 3 generations of Teton Redskins. The name had been in use since 1929, 90 years of that name. And again, it will be a gradual phase out, as he just mentioned. But apparently the liberals in eastern Idaho, more and more of them settling there as they can't afford homes over in Jackson, have made some decisions, and their decisions are to virtue signal and follow the politically correct playbook. The news is on the way. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Speaking of PC, some thoughts about the new president of Boise State University. That's on the way.